That's, thank you, everyone. If you could have a seat, we're about to begin. I used to be a sergeant in the Army, but I'm a sergeant no more. The sergeant in me wants to run around and do push-ups and like, let's get in the seats and but Brian is just excited to hear some literature and to see what the good work that our graduates have been working on for the last two and a half years, roughly. Yeah. We'll only get portions of it, though, just little snippets. We'll have some insights into it. We have 10 graduates total. One is remote. We'll have 9 readers tonight. We'll go with 5 in the beginning. We'll take a break and stretch our legs and get some refreshments, and then we'll do the final 4. And then they'll blow the candle out at the end, and there'll be a lot of love in the room. But how do we get here? I said something about the candle, so let me light the candle real quick. You see here in front of me, I don't know if those in your back can see, but if you might stand up just briefly or look over to the people in front of you, you can see. If you look closely, you'll see some of these books like one book, but if you look closer, there's many, many books stacked on top of it. This is from the beginning of our program until now. And your books will be added on top of this now. Okay? And so we're standing on the shoulders of all those from before. You know, I realized one quick thing is some of you in the back, these aren't reserved anymore, so you can just feel free to come up and bring the love up closer and all that. And it might help you for those who have trouble hearing like me sometimes, or you just want to be in the action with your photographs, so when your loved one comes up, you can get that great shot that will be remembered on Instagram for the next, 30 minutes, yeah. Yeah. We can make it go viral, because they're going to say things that are going to astound us all. All right, so the way we do it here is we've already met everyone. You've met those you haven't seen before with the introductions. So all I do is come up and I just say the name of the reader who's about to come up. They're going to read from a short portion from their thesis manuscript. And our first reader is Allison Branscombe.
First off, I want to thank Brian and Pablo for letting me do picture books, memoir, and historical fiction as the middle grade novel for my thesis. I will first read a section from my memoir called The Dream. My daughters were born in 1994 and 1996 during the inhumane implementation of its family planning rule, the one-child policy. Families of overquoted children received fines. In the last 3 years, the brutal enforcement of that policy came to light. Full-term overquota babies were delivered by government midwives to orphanages, which were paid a bounty, no questions asked, to anyone showing up with a child at that door. From there, these children were lost to their birth parents. To let our daughter's birth family know she was safe and healthy was always an imperative, clamoring in my soul. Within this context, this was my dream last summer. The birth mother of my older daughter walked towards me. I heard her staccato sobs. They shook me to my core. She would not raise her eyes to meet mine. Her work-worn hands beseeched me, palms open and up. I pulled her body close to mine. Our silence was broken only by the throbbing of each other's heart. In a sacred moment of exquisite connection, I gently reached in and held her heart in my hands, still pumping its lifeblood to all of her. In that moment, her sobbing abated. The heart that gave life to her body and to our daughter was joy-filled. Her heart's warmth and rhythmic movement reassured me as her loyal and loving soul vibrated with the echoes of my daughter's beginnings. She too, ever so gently, took hold of my heart and looked into my soul. Our hearts merged. She lifted her head, our eyes wedded. Through a knowing beam of light, I conveyed a narrative of the life of her ghost daughter, the one who is so vibrant, so real to me. In an instant, her heart, yes, her whole body trembled, allowing decades of tension to unclench and fall away. Her eyes thanked me for her heart's needed knowingness. We spoke no words. In that moment, she now knew her daughter was thriving, a loving, smart, accomplished young woman, concerned about the world's humanity and social justice. In a divinely spiritual moment, we smiled, knowing we share a daughter who will bring honor to all of her parents. In that moment, I knew I had done all I could to help them understand that their daughter was safe and happy. Her mother and I tenderly unclasped each other's heart and released our lingering breaths. After our moment of joining passed, we stepped back. Again, her eyelids squeezed shut, new tears cascading down her cheeks. Her heart's remaining desire was to see, hold, and caress her daughter's face. It pulsed through the air and grabbed my gut. Words asking to see her daughter went unspoken, as if it would be too presumptuous. We turned and walked away from each other to resume our physical lives, comforted by this gift. The dream ended, lifting itself into my conscious mind. An unfamiliar peace enveloped me. I had answered my heart's call to offer her birth mother's soul a small but essential candlet of closure for her unfathomable loss. While we had both wanted more information, the universe let us know we did not truly need it at that time. The bonds of family and motherhood run deep, chained to every emotion that brings pain and laughter. Our parenting experiences are held and replayed over and over in our minds' time capsules. This dream brought me a shard of peace as a mother. It allowed me to grant a measure of comfort to my daughter's other parents after decades of their unknowing agony. I fervently wish this dream was not just an illusion fashioned by my helping spirits. Perhaps I will find out when we all meet in our next lives. This is my mother's story. The character is Betta. She lives in Vienna, Austria in 1938, and Hitler has taken over Austria. Betta has been told that under Hitler's Nuremberg laws, she and her family are now considered Jewish. But she was raised Catholic and had never known anything different. Betta was in a dream, lost in a dream, imagining herself as a Jew. But the mirror she stood in front of reflected nothing. She thought, now that I'm considered a Jew, I don't know how to be Jewish. I feel like a fake Jew. But to Hitler, I'm not. Fists pounded on the door, waking Betta from her nap on the couch. Open up now, or we'll break down your door, unfamiliar voices demanded. Betta ran to the door, looked through the peephole. Nazis! Without knowing what to do, she opened the door an inch. No one is home but me, sir. We'll be the judge of that. The tallest one, a burly man, shoved the door open and Betta fell backward onto the hallway wall. We're looking for Jews. Where are your parents? There's no one here but me, sir. His boots clomped on the hard wooden planks of the hallway as he came towards Betta, pushed her out of the way. With long strides, he quickly canvassed each room, each closet, pushing and smashing things in his path out of the way. He opened the glass china cabinet, and with one swoosh of his burly arm, he swept a shelf of the family's delicate blue and gold china to the floor. He stomped on it, grinning. "Sir, that's our good china." From under his bushy brown eyebrows, his eyes turned and scowled at her. "So?" He pulled out an axe out of a duffel bag he carried, raised it in the air, and hacked their antique mahogany dining table into several massive pieces of kindling. He glared at her as if daring her to say more. Shocked, she shuddered back into the shadow of the corner. He and his lieutenant shoved all the furniture to the center of each room and bedroom, looking for those secret passageways and doors, but none were to be found. Betta's body recoiled from the stench of alcohol, hanging heavy wherever the men had looked. "You're right, there was no one here." But the burly one eyed Betta. A smile crept into the outer edges of his lips. "Come here, girl." Betta stepped backward. A quake shivered down her spine. Once, twice. "No, leave me alone." Her heart thudded as he lunged at her, pushed her onto a nearby couch, and clapped one hand over her mouth. "Shut up!" She felt his rough hand reach under her skirt to her panties. His lieutenant moved in, grabbed her breasts, and pinned her down. Shifting was impossible under their muscled grasp. Betta tried to bite the hand covering her mouth, but failed. "Hey, man, stop! She's just a girl. She could be your little sister, or mine." The young one spoke. His face was red, his eyes bulging. Trying to inhale, Betta choked as the men's violent grasp loosened. Without a word, two men stood, then strode out of the room without a glance toward the young girl. "I'll bet she's Jewish," said the burly one as he slammed the door behind him. A jolt of adrenaline blinded Betta. Her mind had separated from her body, aloft and swaying in space. Her heart pounded. She fell to her knees, her hands clasped in prayer. "Thank you, Mary, Mother of Jesus. Thank you for saving me."
And now, Daniel Davis.
Howdy, y'all. What up? All right, yeah. I want to first thank every professor and student here that's ever had a conversation with me about craft. Without those conversations, my stories and hopefully yours, never would have left my brain or your brains. So thank you. Whether it was a rushed lunch or boozy dinner, thank you for having that talk with me. I want to thank every friend who's ever supported me throughout this and let me crash on the couch and write at their house for a month, or bought me food because they realized I was just chewing on my pen and that was maybe the only thing I'd eaten that day. But more importantly, I want to thank someone who arguably probably deserves their name on my thesis as much as I do. My sister Sam is as far as sisters go, I really lucked out. She's the coolest person. I suggest that you all meet her tonight at some point, and that has nothing to do with the fact that she's related to me. She listened to every stupid idea, bad idea, rambling idea, where characters all of a sudden lived in different countries, and was just yeah, all right. Well, what's that have to do with your story? And really kept me centered. So without her, I won't be up here. So thanks, Sam. You're cool. On a more serious note, that's not my thesis. That's just all right. On a more serious note, I think it's real important for me to acknowledge that this story is dedicated to Joe DiMatteo because he was the he was the first person in my life to ever tell me that I could be a storyteller when I grow up. All right. So Born Hooligan, Chapter 1, Diamond Dreams. 8 a.m. is too early for a bar fight, but that's where I find myself. I'm sitting at our booth at O'Neill's Diner and Bar, and of course Dudley is reading over my shoulder, but I can tell he wants to get in on the action around us. A replay of the Philadelphia Union's last match against NYCFC is on the TV, lighting up the table enough so I can read the article of the Daily Journal about my team. I snagged the paper after someone heading into work left it at the counter. Whack! Get the hell up! O'Neill's Diner and Bar is the only place in Shady Lakes to get a decent meal. The place opens at 6 in the morning and doesn't close until 2 a.m. It's also the best place in the world to get a pork roll sandwich after a long night of drinking, or a cheesesteak for lunch. Shady Lakes is so small that O'Neill's Diner and Bar is the only diner and the only bar in town. But with pork roll sandwiches that taste like they've been blessed by St. Piglet, who needs anywhere else? Smash! Oh, you The bar fight is between two local gangs that both stake claim to O'Neill's as their territory, despite the owner's attempt to make it a safe haven for anyone trying to avoid the beef. The dim lighting, chipped tables recovered from a dumpster, and the seats that look like Freddy Krueger lives under them don't exactly give off a feeling of Eden. Pop! That's what I thought. Dudley and I are joined by 3 bikers from the Sherwood Motorcycle Club. Mouse, Slick, and Bare Ass. Slick, on account of his hair and him always trying to make a slimy deal. Mouse, due to him always having one under his eye about the size of a fist. And Bare Ass, because he's got the size and ass of a bear. Dudley and I are kind of like honorary members. For now. Since both our dads are members. Well, they're more than just members. They run this shit. The 3 bikers were here last night, and based on their breath and slurred speech, they may not have left. At least Dudley and I got some shut-eye before coming back. The other gang, the Dead Presidents, they've been fighting with the Sherwood Motorcycle Club ever since I was a kid. I grew up around their brawls, and I've found myself involved in a few over the years. Today's scrap started over whose food was at the counter. The same food that is now on the floor being cleaned up by a probie to the hooligans, the nickname for the motorcycle club. Did you see this shit? I asked the table, quoting the paper in my hand. Luke McKenna, St. Michael's Academy senior striker, claims if we could shut down their scoring pair, a win is guaranteed for us. Guaranteed! Can you believe that? Hell, man, Mouse says, checking the bruise under his eye with a butter knife at the table. He's tripping for sure, Slick says, finger in his mouth, counting his teeth. Who's Luke McKenna? Asked Bare Ass. He's new to Shady Lakes, but his bloody knuckles made him a quick addition to the hooligans. I want to die, god damn it. I'm gonna be sick. Dudley runs to the bathroom. He comes back more pale than his ginger ass normally is. He's washed his freckly face and wet his red curly mullet out of his eyes. He sits down like he didn't just run off and puke and says, Luke fucking McKenna. You know that kid from Parrot Lily Hill that Coach Seamus kept giving chances to? Well, he left Hinder City to go to St. Michael's his senior year. He was mad about how much playing time he was getting. Thinks he'll have better opportunities for scholarships over there. What a piece of shit. Timmy O'Neill barrels out of the kitchen with trays in hand. The beer keg-shaped cook brings them to the only other table with customers. The foursome of dead presidents nursing their faces and sitting on the opposite side of the diner. The Sherwood Motorcycle Club and the dead president's rivalry goes back forever. We normally keep out of each other's hair, but at O'Neill's, the front door is all that separates our warring tables. I don't even know why they come here. You'd think being all anti-drug and everything means no booze, but like I said, this is the best spot for food in town. No offense to the bodega across the street from school. "The hell, O'Neill?" Dudley yells. "We've been waiting all damn day." "Dudley, you've been here for 10 minutes. Timmy O'Neill never joined the club and just tries to run an honest business in a town full of questionable ones. He's a good dude, even if he is currently giving food to the damn dead presidents instead of 2 high school kids that are already running late for school." I fold the newspaper around the article and lick the edges. Careful not to crease through the part about our school's all-time scoring record. Bare ass hits my arm, ruining my chair. "So, how many games till you beat your old man's record, Shamrock?" "Can you make mine and Shamrock's to go?" Dudley hollers at Timmy O'Neill. Timmy shoots him a thumbs up as he returns to the kitchen. Slick jumps up from the table. His face lights up like he should be speaking into a microphone hanging from the ceiling, and he says, "Guys, Sean Reedus is here!" You like that one, Sam? Pop steps through the door under one of the few working fluorescent yellow lights. It shines bright on him, illuminating the clover green flames tattooed on his bald head. He's in his vest with Vice President patch over his heart. He kisses Mom, who has walked next to him. She's in a denim jumpsuit with the top tied around her waist. She's nearly covered in dust and soot from the glass factory, smiling at each other like there's no one else in O'Neill's. They grab 2 seats at the counter. Pop snags 2 mugs, pours them both some coffee, then he slips a flask from his vest and tops his mug off. The dead president should consider themselves lucky Pops wasn't here when they were scrapping with Mouse, Slick, and Bare Ass. Otherwise, that brawl wouldn't have ended so quickly and semi-amicably. Then again, Mom usually keeps Pop from getting into a fight too early in the morning. Dudley looks at me. "No, we're gonna have to sleep out the back, dude." Looking at Pops and Mom, I'm pretty sure we could walk right past them and they wouldn't notice. They're like a couple kids in love. We could tap them on the shoulder and they still wouldn't see their only son and best friend, who they practically raised here. Timmy O'Neill sees them and gives us the nod towards the back door, dropping our food in brown bags. Slick says he'll cover the check, and we're out of there before he can change his mind. We sneak out, and if we speed down Sherwood Drive, we can make it to school before 3rd period, and my girlfriend, Adine, won't notice that I'm late and get mad. The last thing I need to do is give her more reasons to be pissed off at me. Last night, she said I was drinking too much and that I was going to be too hungover to come to school. Now, sure, I am currently hungover and late for school, but it's Monday. They suck for a reason. That's why no one likes them. We're starting our bikes when a teal truck pulls up to us. It's a 1983 Chevy C10 because of course it is. The driver gets out slamming his door. He's in a vest that bears Sergeant at Arms patch on his front. On the back, there's a banner that reads Sherwood Motorcycle Club, and the SMC's insignia sewn in, a Dullahan, which is like an Irish Grim Reaper mixed with the Headless Horseman. "You 2 shitbags want to explain to me why you're not in school right now?" Coach Seamus's face looks like he could be a drill instructor telling Marines how yellow-bellied they are and not harassing a pair of high school kids that are late for school. "Hey, Coach." Dudley's pulling his black Letterman jacket on, the sleeves covered in quarter-sized red and yellow rectangles, one for each card that Dudley's got, proving that he'd make any sacrifice for the team, and also proving that he is the most penalized player to ever play the beautiful sport of soccer. Across from O'Neill's Diner and Bar, there's a field that we used to play on, but it's kind of gone to shit now. "Don't hey coach me. I asked you 2 a question. Figure between the brain cell you 2 share, you could come up with an answer. Coach Seamus ain't budging, which means we can't get moving. I snap my helmet on and say, we thought we'd get some food before school." "Food? Food? If you 2 puppy farts want food, stop at Wawa and get something." Coach Seamus's cigar works to punctuate his sentences like he speaks in ember and smoke. Coach Seamus hops back in Adine's truck. He usually uses it to run like errands and shit when she's in school. As Coach Seamus pulls out of the parking spot, he backs up and I yell to Dudley, "Puppy farts?" Yo, it's hard to take him serious when he says shit like that, right? Dudley laughs. "What was that?" Coach Seamus yells. Dudley jumps, nearly knocking his bike over. After composing himself, he rips out of the parking lot like an orange star, rocketing down Sherwood Drive. I follow, keeping speed, like the star's green tail. Coach Seamus struggles to keep up. We're shining too bright and going way too fast to be stopped. Thank you.
And now, Rachel James.
Act 1, memorize, to commit to memory, to learn by heart. June 1979, Houston. Outside the Summit Arena where the Rockets play, it's a moderate 84 degrees. Inside, extreme persuasions swell as 16,000 Southern Baptists gather to vote for the next president of their convention. From above, tucked into a press box, the architects of the fundamentalist takeover peer down on the conservative troops they've rallied. The slippery slope of liberalism will destroy us. We believe the Bible. Anyone who disagrees with us does not. The troops chant. There are those, like my grandmother, who came to make monthly pledges for mission work. They came to discuss racial reconciliation and to focus on being apolitical amidst global growth. They came to discuss the next stage of unity for Southern Baptists. Women should graciously submit to their husbands. Echoes off the stage where KISS is slated for their dynasty tour. My mother's there as a woman with her own call to ministry. She's left chilled. The vote is called. I'm 3 months old and tucked away in childcare with the babies where we drink from bottles and discover our hands. The ballots are collected, the group breaks for lunch boxes before afternoon worship. The fundamentalists win the presidential election in a 51-49 vote. After the convention back home in Kentucky, my parents and their friends, progressive Baptists, grieve the takeover. Over Folgers in the evenings, they strategize next steps. They, among others, begin to imagine a new future. My diaper is changed over these conversations. I'm fed and burped and balanced on the knees of this purpose, their hearts and conviction, my lullaby. To understand the harmony in the parsonage where we live next door to Finchville Baptist Church, despite the fracturing around it, is to understand the beginnings of a divided self. 1980. Christ's voice and my Father's are the same. The wind blows where it pleases, he recites from the pulpit. You hear its sound, but you can't tell where it comes from or where it's going, so it is with everyone born of the Spirit. He's the movie star version of Jesus, tall with dark hair and blue eyes inked in lashes. But he's also kind and gentle, and this combination of good looks and heart, humility and wisdom are part of his magic. Big words drip from his mouth because he's still young, 25, and in the early work of his ministry, he carves his sermons from metaphors and analogies that echo as truth. My father discovers phrases that resonate with this tobacco farming community in his first pastorate. Weaving in the language of Daniel Boone, our Sunday sermons sprout from the soil of Abraham Lincoln's birthplace an hour away. This piece of my Jesus Father is woven into my days and nights like skeletal muscle fibers. Christ's teachings, the certainty of his love and my parents' love, an unconditional web. The tendons of bones connect head and heart, sitting me upright. It's here that I learn I am known and loved. It's here that I embrace the certainty so that I can enter the mystery. In the spring of my 3rd birthday, my father and I nestle in the back of a dark theater. I'm closest to the aisle, sitting at the peak where the light from the stage meets the dark. We watch my mother, a cardinal, humming around the lit stage, slick, bosom thrust, out of my reach. She kisses another man after singing to him, and curiosity warms me like the morning sun. It's the final dress rehearsal for Oklahoma, and my mother is the lead. Tomorrow night, the congregation from my father's church will come to witness their preacher's wife commit acceptable adultery. Years from now, I'll joke that this is the seed of my life as an actress, but tonight, it's my world tilting on a new axis. I glance at my father. His eyes are soft. His gentle smile does not falter. In that moment, a shift and awareness that things are not always as they seem, and that is as it should be. The drama of love and death play out in song and dance. A small town and surrounding land are contained on a stage. Intimacies are shared publicly as we watch a kiss, a slap, a stab. An independent woman chooses marriage. I learn that life happens in bursts of color and thread this rhythm into my character. 2012. My car vibrates in all its glory as I surpass the Texas speed limit of 75 miles per hour. The library of books in the back, the white leather chair that had been my grandmother's, the crates of costume jewelry are quiet in their place. Only the large trash bag labeled black cocktail dresses hums with the speed. 27 dresses, a pile of beads and sequins, fringe and leather, silk and lace sliver in my bag, my heap of shed skins. As we near San Antonio, my anxiety grows. It grows because I'll no longer be in motion. There's no more next thing. I wasn't coming home for the holidays with a return ticket. I wasn't coming home with a clear purpose to have surgery and recover and then return to my real life as I'd done the year before. I was drowned in such a deep depression, my cells were soaked, heartbroken from years of accumulated heartaches, whether my own or another's doing. I was unemployed and in debt. But most terrifying of all, my dream, my understanding of how to function in the world, the dream of story and creation, adventure and pursuit of art was gone. It had shriveled up, been pecked apart, bones dried and scattered to the wind, untraceable, and in its absence, my sense of self vanished. I was 33 years old, the same age of Jesus at the height of his ministry, 2 years younger than Buddha when he reached enlightenment, about to sleep in a bedroom across the hall from my parents. My mother and I pull into the driveway on Agarita. With the car in motion, my friends, my network, my acting studio, the shell of my former life remained full-sized. But as I turned off the ignition, the cicadas screaming in my ears, all that had been fell away. I'll be haunted in the coming months. But in this moment, there's the thick South Texas air, the screen kitchen door swinging open, and my father dancing down the stairs, his arms open, his eyes full of light. He, my mother, and I make it as far as the kitchen floor. We sit and talk, and then we start to make a list. how to live together as 3 adults. 15 years have passed since I first left home for college. Obviously, you're an adult. You can come and go as you want to. My dad begins. You have your keys. There's coffee every morning. I'll deliver it at whatever time you like. Okay. Okay. I can see him shift gears as he gets in touch with his feelings. Just to say it out loud, I'm not comfortable with anything harder than beer or wine in the house. Got it. Hide whiskey in closet. Hey now, he tickles behind my ear. Okay, I'm gonna have to get used to seeing guys in the house again. Dad, I don't see that coming up. I wouldn't be there long enough. And I had nothing to offer myself, let alone a relationship. But I take in my father's words. He's seeing something I can't.
And now Julie Chris.
Hi. Hello. Okay. I'm Julie, and before I begin, I want to express my gratitude towards my mentors, Pablo, obviously, that introduced me tonight, and Joe McGee and Jess Rinker, and also my WCYA tribe, who've really been there for me for the past 2 years, so thank you. I also really want to thank Brian Turner for the patience and unconditional support and encouragement that he's given me. Without Brian, I would not have made it here tonight, so thank you. So I'm going to read an excerpt from a middle grade novel that I've been writing. Middle grade is usually for 8 to 10-year-olds. So this story, the title is called Life's a Zoo, and my main character is Gwendolyn, and she's 9 years old, and she's very awkward, and she has a pet snake. Her best friend is a pet snake named Elroy, who plays a very significant role in this piece, but he's always with her. So she lives at a zoo with her parents. They bought a private zoo. She lives there and works there. But what she really wants to do is be a cool kid in school. So it's her first year at a new school. She's in 5th grade. And her journey to discover what being cool means is what, at this point, that's what she's in the midst of. So when you hear Elroy, he's a California king snake who lives in a tank in her room. After dinner that evening, Gwendolyn's parents settled down in the living room with Weasel and Bagels curled up on the couch. "Hey, Mom," she loudly whispered into the room. Her parents were watching one of those talent programs. "Can I use the iPad?" "Shh." Her mom nodded but waved her away without glancing up from the television screen where a bulky man wearing a toga was singing the national anthem while juggling fluorescent bowling pins. Gwendolyn smiled to herself and rushed upstairs. She usually logged onto the internet from the family computer in the den, but this was much too important and too private. She didn't want her parents to see what she was looking at or ask too many questions. After closing her bedroom door tightly, Gwendolyn sat on her bed and turned on the iPad. She opened the search engine and typed the first name on Anaya's list. Teased Tendrils. The screen opened to a sparkly blue webpage filled with short video clips of teenage girls doing a variety of hairstyles. There were videos of braids, bangs, ponytails, and elaborate updos that Gwendolyn had only ever seen on the Miss America pageant. One fascinating video showed a woman pulling her long hair into a ballerina-type bun using a rolled-up sock. Next to each video clip was a list of the products and materials needed for each hairstyle. Most of the list started normal enough with things Gwendolyn already owned: a brush, a comb, a hairdryer, hairpin, shampoo, and conditioner. But some of the lists were super complicated with items that Gwendolyn had never even heard of. She watched in bewilderment as girls debated the pros and cons of different hair appliances including whether a Sub-Zero hair straightener was worth the cost and if porcelain plates were comparable to titanium. When two women began to demonstrate a vibrating hair smoothing comb, Gwendolyn turned it off. The hairstyles were impressive, but it was too overwhelming. Next on the list was a YouTube channel that showed compilation videos of the month's hottest singers, models, and teenage celebrities. There were also clips from TV shows and new movies. The music videos included everyone from popular K-pop bands to the infamous Jerry Journey guitar video. For the next hour, Gwendolyn and Elroy watched numerous music videos, read various blogs, and listened to a comedy podcast of silly jokes. By the time they reached the halfway point on Anaya's list, Gwendolyn's eyes had begun to glaze over and her ears were buzzing. She knew all of this was important, but there was so much of it. Wasn't there a quicker way? Desperate and exhausted, Gwendolyn clicked back to the search engine and in a moment of sleepy silliness typed, "How to be a cool fifth grader." To her shock, the page filled with links and videos. Gwendolyn sat up and peered forward. "Great grasshoppers," she whispered to herself. "No way is it this easy." Elroy stretched his neck towards the screen. Gwendolyn's heart raced as she clicked on the first link. The iPad screen filled with a shiny face and a huge smile which greeted, "Hello, everyone. I'm Mackenzie Mackley. I live in London, England, and I want to teach you how to be your very best in fifth grade." Great grasshoppers, Gwendolyn thought to herself. Suddenly wide awake, she leaned off the bed and pulled a notebook and pen out of her backpack. She was going to need to take notes for this. Gwendolyn and Elroy spent the rest of the night closely watching Mackenzie Mackley in her series of videos. Gwendolyn would pause and replay sections, taking careful notes of everything she saw. She even took a few screenshots. Mackenzie was 10 years old and lived with her family in a tall white wooden house with a shiny black front door. It had a large front garden that Mrs. Winchell would love. It was filled with flower beds and rose bushes and even a single wooden swing hanging from the branch of a tree. Mackenzie had silky blonde hair pulled into pigtails on each side of her head. They were so smooth and shiny, they reminded Gwendolyn of jellyfish's tentacles riding the EAC, East Australian Current. She patted her own hair, a springy mess of chestnut brown curls that could barely be contained by a rubber band, let alone wrestled into two straight ponytails, or long braids woven with ribbons. Mackenzie had blue eyes the color of a swimming pool and very straight teeth. Gwendolyn couldn't figure out why Mackenzie's lips were so shiny until episode number 3, when she showed the viewers an impressive collection of flavored lip gloss. Mackenzie wore matching tops and leggings with brightly colored stripes, flower-printed dresses, and spotless white sneakers tied with glittery laces. In one video, she even wore a tutu. Gwendolyn wasn't a big fan of dresses, and she didn't know where one would even get a tutu. But the tops and leggings were okay. The glittery laces were awesome, but Gwendolyn couldn't remember a time that her sneakers were ever that clean. In fact, she could have sworn that all of her shoes came straight out of the box with a light coating of zoo dust. Gwendolyn was fascinated by Mackenzie Mackley's bedroom. There was so much pink. Gwendolyn had never been a fan of the color pink, and the shade in Mackenzie Mackley's room reminded her of a flamingo with the stomach flu. However, Gwendolyn informed Elroy, if cool fifth grade girls like pink, so be it. Mackenzie had a bright, clean daybed, neatly made with a rainbow-printed bedspread. The bed displayed a collection of immaculate dolls and stuffed animals shaped like unicorns. There was also a variety of fluffy and furry pillows covered with feathers and sequins. Gwendolyn sighed as she rubbed her hand over her own bedspread. It was a faded camouflage print. She'd had it since she was 6 years old, and it was covered with indeterminable animal fur, cookie crumbs, and old faded juice stains that hadn't come out in the wash. There were no fluffy or furry pillows on her bed. Just the standard bed pillows covered by cloth cases printed with brightly colored cartoon frogs. The frogs clashed with the muted dinosaurs that were printed on the bed sheets. Gwendolyn was most impressed by how clean Mackenzie Mackley's bedroom was. All of her toys and books were carefully displayed on the shelves of a white wooden bookcase. Her school supplies were carefully arranged on a desk painted pink with white trim. Gwendolyn's own bedroom was currently a mess of dirty clothes, books, Lego sets, stuffed animals, most of the reptile variety, board games, and bug catching nets. There was a cracked, overturned, and empty ant farm, and a Tupperware bowl of cloudy water filled with sea monkeys. Unlike Mackenzie Mackley's walls, which were decorated with watercolor prints of butterflies and fairies, Gwendolyn's bedroom walls were covered with slightly crooked posters showing frogs, sloths, and beavers, and one particularly awesome poster that showed the Great Migration in Kenya. Gwendolyn was most perplexed by Mackenzie Mackley's fluffy white Pomeranian named Godiva. Godiva wore sequin bows in her hair. Gwendolyn did not have a fluffy white Pomeranian, nor could she get one in the foreseeable future. Gwendolyn just had Elroy in his 40-gallon tank by the closet. Gwendolyn did not think that Elroy would be enthusiastic about sequin bows. In fact, if she was honest, Elroy was never enthusiastic about much of anything.
All right, so we have one more reader, then we're going to take a break for about 10 minutes, and then we'll come back for the next half, yeah? And that is Marcy Merrill.
Hello, everyone. I'm so pleased to be here tonight. It's been a long journey. My brother and sister are here, and they now can call me the master storyteller of the family. That means that every story comes through me. And I'm also joined by my canoeing partner, Tom, who is also my partner in life, and he paddles at the back to keep us going in the right direction, and I just provide all the power. I just thought of that right now. And I'm also joined by my daughter, Callie. I was 21 when I had her, and having her saved my life. And she has saved my life many times since then. And she has also brought these two little adorable girls into my life, my granddaughters Sloan and Thea. So I'm just very grateful. I'm very grateful for all the staff and the mentors that I've worked with here at Sierra Nevada College. I've tried really hard to learn, and they've been very good teachers. So I'm going to read from my novel, The Argonauts. Well, that is, if I can remember my password. Okay. Long ago, near the top of the world, mountains larger than any humans have ever seen floated on the Earth's mantle, like icebergs at sea. With volcanic eruptions, the mountains splintered. The wind and ice wore them down. Scientists say this world emerged when the climate warmed. 10,000 years ago, a giant ice sheet receded and scraped clean the mountain's roots, exposing the oldest rocks on the planet. Glacial lakes formed, divided, and reformed, leaving the daughters Great Bear, Great Slave, and Lake Athabasca. The remaking of land is not gentle. The Fort Chipewyan, Dene, Cree, and Métis people live in this dream world north of the 58th parallel, a landscape of water, muskeg, and 4-million-year-old rocks. Grandfather and grandmother rocks carry memory of change. So do the fresh waters of Lake Athabasca and the caribou and the bear. Up in the sky from all four directions, over 1 million birds migrate. They move in spirals, waves, and wedges across the inland delta. We know the first Europeans didn't come for the beauty, not the lichen-painted bedrock or the startling breadth and width of Lake Athabasca. Their desire was economic. They wanted beaver fur to make top hats. For 300 years, fashionable French and English men wore beaver felt hats to announce their status. 8 generations of hat makers, the Hatters, went mad from the mercury in the felting water. With beavers nearly extinct, the settlers pushed west. The building of an empire continued, the desire to mine the world, to own the land and resources. The settlers brought smallpox to Fort Chip, the Great Famine, Spanish flu, the Indian Act, and 72 years of residential school. It was an awful time. Genocide, the destruction of a people, is not gentle. Fort Chippewayan's Holy Angels Residential School closed in 1974. We've heard the stories of physical and sexual abuse, the malnutrition, the nutritional experiments, the unrecorded deaths of children. Our hearts hurt. We want to walk, move, shake off the feeling of unease. We may deny what we see. We may look away. It's an ugly part of our history. It's a difficult fact to face. We are not the country we think we are. Then Freya arrived. She was born in the interior of British Columbia to French, Irish, English, Italian parents. Her ancestors believed in starting over. Settlers who couldn't find a place to settle, they crossed the Atlantic Ocean in the 1600s and never stopped moving. Freya believed the act of starting over was a character trait. She went back to school in her 40s after another ended relationship to become an art and English language arts teacher. She met Richard, the principal of the Athabasca Delta School, at a hiring fair. She told him her practicum at an inner city school prepared her for coping with low student engagement and parent distrust of the system. Lily, the school counselor and community member, led the first professional development day, cultural awareness training for all the new non-Indigenous teachers, the truth about residential school. Freya had a panic attack. Ice-covered puddles collapsed under Freya's weight and mud collected in her boot treads. She stopped to scrape them out with the long handle of her paintbrush. No one wondered what the new art teacher was doing or where she was going. 8 months into the school year, people knew Freya's routine, a walk to the lake every day. Being left alone was just fine with her. People like you more if you're not around much. Ravens followed Freya's path from telephone pole to fence post. They flew ahead of her and cawed for the old hot dog buns in her pockets. At the end of Mackenzie Avenue, she turned toward the lake and the old residential school. Down by the water, she cleared a dusting of snow from a rock. She pulled out her smudge, an abalone shell, a braid of sweetgrass, a bundle of sage, and a box of wooden matches. She bathed herself in the sweetgrass sage smoke the way she'd seen Lily do. Eyes, ears, mouth, throat, and over the head. Say, hear, think good things. Smudging helped her start again. Clouds loomed on the horizon. Small ice floes sped past. Lily was a wise woman. She had become like a big sister to Freya, almost a mother, certainly a mentor. Lily was number 35 in Holy Angels in 1963. She suffered awful things. She reminded Freya of a mother raven, the way her head moved, listening to a person speak, considering her response. And when she spoke, it was clear what she meant to say. She believed everyone was equal, no matter their skin color. She taught Freya how to bead, long fringe earrings and moccasins. They spent long hours beading and talking. Lily believed that people had to learn again, to love and respect themselves and each other. Addiction was a tool for relieving pain, she said. Youth suicide, she said, was a response to the confusion of everyday life. We are connected to the land, Lily said. Our bodies need to be in nature. We need to be connected to each other through ceremony and ritual. Freya believed Lily's words. She believed ceremony and ritual were magical. Thank you.
I will show you because I'm going to the bathroom.
That you insist. better.
But it gets kind of dark. Death. Right. But I don't I do. I'm really proud of
Very nice. Sorry, we're the ones with the loud child and we're leaving. I'm Rachel's husband, Jack. So, but he's a good kid. He's pretty good. Kids sitting still and quiet for extended periods doesn't mix well.
It's unrealistic.
But your stuff is great. Thank you. All right. So I'm gonna move it back. So we're gonna go check. Oh, you got Can you show them another jacket?
I haven't felt like
We are, yeah. Why do I speak for you? That She's right here.
Yeah, buddy. Yes, do your phone. We gotta find your hat. Do I have your hat?
Did you? Yes, I'll work on that one if you want. Okay, because y'all are going out in the very, very cold. Thank you. We got to get you ready. Who would? Oh, I'm sorry. What am I doing? This hat is just.
It's too little.
I think if we took unsewed the cup thing and pulled that around, that would help. Okay.
We're at, no, we got some wet pants.
He's gonna go change.
The hot dog. We'll see you at the hot.
You okay?
Yeah, we're good. Yeah, we're gonna get the map out once we move it.
You're a great daddy.
Oh, all right, let's go change. Let's unlock the camera.
I'll share.
Puzzle guy sent him a text saying that since you're working in the city, we already we have a ride already. I'll need to maybe fix if we do it here in the morning where we go.
Very nice. That's great.
Hey, who am I taking a picture of? Oh, okay. Why don't you have that as a background so
Need a book. Any book. You're in Boise?
All right, everyone, if you could have a seat. While you're doing that, while you're having a seat, earlier this week we had a wonderful guest who is an alum of the program. Her book has just come out this year, and she's a phenomenal human being, a close friend, a writer who's come through our community and our program, and we'd like to give her a gift from our community to her before she heads back to Texas tomorrow. So would Faylita Hicks come up to the stage, please?
Yes. Yes. Thank you. Yay! Where would cry?
Right? All right. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. And right now we're going to just jump right into it with Gwen Monahan.
We all good? Now we got it out of our system? Alright. My manuscript is structured like a symphony, so it's broken up into movements. And for any orchestra, there's always a warm-up period in the beginning. So what I'm reading for you is the warm-up, and it's called Little Man. He is 8 or 9 months old, and I am sitting with him on the dark flowered rug in the front of the hall of my parents' house, encouraging tummy time. This is what I do now that I've been laid off, now that the semester of graduate school has ended, giving me large swaths of time that bleed into one another. Little Man picks at the carpet with his tiny fingers, fascinated by the fibers in the pink-hued leaf, and spits bubbles. I call his name, but he does not respond. I pat his back. His head lifts up before sinking into the carpet. His eyes crinkle. I pick him up and roll him over onto his back for a rest before a cry erupts. He stares at the ceiling, the light fixture well past its prime, his legs and arms kicking, moving, experimenting with the air. I can smell the stew my sister-in-law is cooking for dinner. George is nearby somewhere, his 2-year-old self keeping himself occupied. He sleeps in my room while I sleep on an air mattress in the living room during these visits. Well, there is still hope. Hope I possess skills rendering me useful to a company or an organization. Hope some company or organization wants me. Hope my independence will remain intact. His eyes look up, down, side to side, taking in the room. They stay to the side for a moment, and I look behind me, into the living room, wondering what has caught his attention. A book, perhaps, on a bottom shelf, its hardcover binding worn from use and age. Some call that room a library because of the books. People marvel at the books, the organization by category, fiction, travel, self-help, gardening, the physician desk reference, like years of cardiology text. They have not seen the upstairs hallway, though, with its floor-to-ceiling bookcase that stretches the length of the hall, books stacked in double rows, crammed on top of one another, while stacks of books with no place litter the floor. The children's books still line the bottom shelf, and I imagine George investigating, looking for a bedtime story. Perhaps once one my parents read to my father, or his father, my brother at his age. My brother is at his law office, working on starting up his practice. My mother's not yet home from teaching, and my father's still seeing patients at the office. I wonder momentarily about my other brother, a retired banker in New York. Little Man makes a noise as he cocks his head to the other side, those blue eyes back to investigating the ceiling. My hands brush his blonde hair forward, a gesture I know is soothing to him, as I say his name again, but his eyes remain fixed elsewhere. I tickle his tummy and say, "Hey, little man." His eyes snap at mine, hold him in the gaze I didn't know newborns possessed. I smile and say, "What's up, little man?" And he smiles, giggles, still looking at me, his arms flailing, fingers reaching towards me. He is not deaf, but there is still something wrong. Little Man exhibits an uncanny intelligence for a baby, though we all disagree that it is uncanny. It is the mark of a Monahan. He learns how to bounce with force in the bouncy swing, causing my mother's chiming clocks, picture frames, and bowls to rattle. The sound gives him pause as he looks around, then repeats the action. He becomes fussy when removed from the bouncy swing, unless it's to be fed. There is a twirl kind of seat, too, with toys on both sides, meant to force the baby to learn to twist and turn and be rewarded with the experience of a 360-degree view, new playthings that teach a different set of motor skills. He protests when he's put into it, and I try to introduce him to the various toys, teach him to spin. He starts pressing his feet against the hardwood floor, raising himself, mimicking the movement of the bouncy swing, but there is no bounce. He keeps trying, frustrated, and stomps his feet. The rattle of clocks is faint, but the stomp is unmistakable. Still, he prefers the bouncy swing, giggling as he squats and pushes with his little toes, launching himself against the restraints. Later, one must be careful when changing him. He kicks hard. Out of protest or a test to gauge reaction, I'm never quite sure. Once wrestled to the changing mat and the wet poopy diaper removed and set behind me to avoid curious little fingers, I grip his heels with one hand and wipe before smearing butt paste on his butt cheeks with the other. His little fingers reach for the new sensation, intrigued by the change in texture he cannot see. He quickly learns to reach through his legs to find new textures for his fingertips, a big grin on his face. I learn to keep an extra wipe at the ready and tell him not to worry. Everything is still there. All good, little man. All good. He smiles. At night, after dinner, I sit Indian style in a leather rocking recliner, cradle him, rock gently, and feed him a bottle. He curls into me, his little hands finding a comfortable position on the bottle as his lips purse and grip the nipple, his eyes staring up, past me, before getting heavy with sleep. I wait for his lips to slack before attempting to remove the bottle. If they do not move and grasp the nipple, I set the bottle on the table, lift him gently to my shoulder for a burp before cradling him again. I hold tight and rock before his eyes and mouth crinkle into a cry. Soon, my sister-in-law and I have mastered the switch off, passing a sleeping little man from one warm embrace to another. She carries him upstairs and cradles him all night as they sleep. Later, we will be told, this was a very good thing. When he learns to crawl, he moves with speed and quickly learns how to pull himself up on chairs, investigating whatever is on them. He climbs the stairs up to the second floor of my parents' house, scoots around the corner, pausing to investigate the books strewn out before discovering another set of stairs on the third floor study. I follow him on these excursions, staying a step or two below in case he falls. His head swivels back now and then, eyes not quite looking at me, but looking. He discovers the pull mechanism of drawers, revealing foreign objects of nail polish, fingernail files, scraps of paper, and elongated wooden objects with pointy ends. He soon learns that applying the pointy end to anything leaves designs. He is fascinated by this, and he still does not listen when spoken to. He requires constant vigilance until he learns only to put pointy ends to paper. When he is 2, he is still not adhering to the established developmental milestones of normal, such as 2-word phrases, answering to his name, or mimicking facial expressions and gestures such as pointing and waving goodbye. He is tested. The results confirm our suspicions. He is on the autism spectrum. I do not know what this means and am skeptical as he responds to things like little man, just not his given name. He doesn't do well in loud environments for an extended period of time, but who does at the age of 2 or 30? We discuss things over dinner, or while sitting in the family room watching TV, now that I have moved back into my parents' house, jobless aside from a contract job with grad school loans, my first dead experience. I find myself thinking about the 3 strikes rule in baseball while my mother sits on the couch cushion with a direct view of the TV, my father half lying on his side at the other end reading on his iPad, and me stretched out on the other couch. I wonder if life is also 9 innings. I am somewhere in the middle. I wonder how I get a pinch hitter, or otherwise remove myself from the game. My mother claims I exhibit a tenderness around little man that no one has seen before and intuitively understands signals no one else notices, so he responds, which is good. I remain skeptical and curious. I too read up on autism and ignore the controversy of origin in favor of its science. I learned that the spectrum is wide-ranging, from totally disabled and needing constant care for life to high-functioning and able to live independently. Little man falls somewhere closer to high-functioning, but requires speech and behavioral therapy to bring him up to speed. I learned I have unknowingly been doing the right things, giving him bear hugs, rubbing his back, brushing his hair forward with the palm of my hand, and tickling to him. Talking to him, telling him it's time to change his diaper, verbally confirming his jewels are still there, and being forceful, but not hurtful, when he reaches for the contents of his dirty diaper, or the butt paste. Sitting with him, watching him, following him up the steps, redirecting his actions, being patient, things I consider normal, done out of safety so he isn't gravely injured or doesn't fall down 14 steps and into the wall in the upstairs hallway, or worse, the tile floor of the front hall, only to roll into the window and cause the mirror to drop. I think of Michael Lewis's book, The Big Short, and how one man learned of his Asperger's through the testing of his son. His son's ability to sit for hours in a room engrossed in something was exactly like his ability to lock himself in his office for hours, poring over the minute details of corporate financial reports that led him to launch a successful hedge fund. He saw what no one else had the patience to see. I wonder if I am autistic, latching on to the symptoms of obsessive repetition, my inability to consistently look people in the eye, and lack of interest in sharing enjoyment or achievement with others. Yet I exhibit empathy, I communicate both verbally and non-verbally, and I've learned to adjust to change. The family passes around Daniel Tammet's memoir, Born on a Blue Day, and I see much of little man in him. There is hope.
And now, Katrin Perksland.
Yeah, Katrin. All right.
Come on, Katrin.
Hello. I
I asked Brian if, since Jess and Joe did my entire reading during my introduction, if I had to go ahead and read, and in typical Brian fashion, he said, yes. It's not that funny. I would like to begin by thanking Brian and Pablo and Joe and Jess and Lisa and Guadalupe. And honestly, I couldn't have done this without the support and help of Steve Lamb and Grandma Lamb and all the Lamb kids. I'll be reading Trip Switch, which is about a 17-year-old demon named Declan. And Trip is his demonic manifestation. And sometimes Trip is just in his head, and sometimes he's like 6'2" standing next to him. So. Kyle Gentry, a permanent fixture in Coach Peter's lunchtime detention, was already there. He'd torn the crust off his sandwich and had his book open. He was nearly halfway through Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? How was your summer? I asked and sank into a seat a few chairs away. I took out Our Mathematical Universe. Even though he was my best friend, we didn't spend much time together outside of class, if any. I'd been to his house. I'd never been to his house, and he'd never been to mine. We were both being raised by single moms, though I think he saw more of his than I saw of mine, even though his mom worked 2 jobs to make sure Kyle and his little sister were well provided for. My desk tilted forward as I put my backpack on top of it and took out my brown lunch bag. He looked up from his book, changed some oil in ritzy cars, made some cash. I completed in 2 cheer competitions, attended 3 camps. Uncle Mike took a trip with my little brother Brendan and I to the Bahamas and lifted weights in the garage. Nothing compared to Kyle's dirty knuckles, sweaty neck, and weekly paycheck. Not much, I answered. Boys, Coach said from behind his paper, you know it's the first day of school. Kyle looked at me and lifted his shoulders. Yes, sir, I answered. Coach turned the page of the arts and entertainment section. There's no detention on the first day of school. Is that why there's no welcome banner or balloons? Kyle leaned forward on his elbows. The desk rocked forward with him. And that's why we love him. Trip nodded towards Kyle. And that, Gentry, is why you will be spending every lunch period with me. Coach folded the section he was reading. And that's why we love him. Trip pointed to Coach Peters. That's a nice stash, Coach Peters, Kyle said. Coach opened up the sports section. Is it okay if we stay, sir? I asked. You're already here. I shook my head and Kyle smiled. He tapped the book in front of me. Do you have homework already? I don't. I laughed. Just a little pleasure reading. Yeah, me too. Hey, Coach, since I'm already here, do you think maybe I can, apply this detention to one later in the year? Not sure it works that way, son, Coach Peters said from behind the sports section of the local paper. Shit. Kyle shrugged and propped his long legs onto the desk in front of him. He returned to his book and opened a bag of Funyuns. 3/4 of the way through my lunch, the intercom crackled to life. Coach Peters, is Declan Kane in there with you? Yes, the newspaper sighed. Can you send him to the office, please? Coach Peters lowered his paper, looked at me, and lifted his eyebrows. You heard him. Get out. Love you too. Trip reappeared in my mind at the hint of trouble. I shook my head in confusion. Yes, sir. I gathered my books and traipsed down the hall towards the office, wondering what they needed. I waved to Kyle on my way out. Talk to you tomorrow. I like him. We should talk to him more often. You don't even talk to him, I told Trip. You talk to him, so I talk to him. Trip did the thriller dance, anticipating a conflict. That little shit loved a conflict and to dance. Knock it off, I told him. We both know there's nothing wrong. You hope there's nothing wrong? We could make something go wrong on the walk there. Rip a couple of doors off lockers, flood the teacher's lounge, put a cherry bomb in the toilet. We don't even have fireworks, I thought. We? I. Tripp's destructive behavior wasn't anything new. He was constantly trying to create a disaster, and he thought at some point I would join him, but he was wrong about me. Demon or not, at the end of the year, I intended my grades to be the top of the class, my attendance to be perfect, and my record to be completely unmarred, despite what he and my mother thought. They believed I would set fire to something and succeed in destroying us all. My mom still feared it, and Tripp was counting on it. It's only the first day of school. There's still time for a fun dose of chaos and destruction. I always expected the worst. That way I was pleasantly surprised when things went relatively okay. I took a deep breath and opened the door into the office. The squeal of the door hid my exhale. Any one of these people in the office could know that I'm a demon, and any one of them could want to kill me. Probably a good part of them do want to hurt you, but it's not because you're a demon, it's because you're annoying. Have a seat. The office aide nodded to a chair in the outer office. I'll let you know when Mrs. Schmidt is ready for you. We were eating lunch and you're not even ready for us? Coach said and appeared in the seat next to me, legs crossed and looking slightly dismayed. A number of people milled around the office like villagers in the background of that video game that Brendan played. So many people in such a small space, and not a single one of them noticed that I had a doppelganger seated next to me. So much potential for bad. Tripp winked at the girl behind the desk. She didn't look up from her book. We're good, I whispered. She looked at me over the top of her glasses and smiled. Holy mother of noobs, Tripp tilted his head toward mine. Just think it. I can hear you. Oh, okay, I said, and then thought, okay. I suppose it all depends on who's looking at it. If it's me, we could use every power we have. So much fun. We could toss a few desks, break a few windows, pull a few alarms. My fingers began to tingle. Small electric pulses flowed through my body. We could, though, and you'd like it. I can tell by the way you wiggle your feet. I turned to face him. We could, but you said we can't do anything I'm not willing to do, and I'm not willing to do any of that. I ran my pulsing hands along the arms of the chairs. This is what I dealt with all day, every day. One little slip, one little lapse of judgment, and I could bring the entire microcosm crashing down around us. I wouldn't do that, though. Not intentionally. I would. Tripp stretched out in his chair. I know, I told him, because you are clearly the demon here. The big demon in the office chair next to me pointed to the file cabinet. Know it would be fun? Maybe fry the coffee pot. Teachers love coffee. That would make my life worse, I thought. Why would I want to make things any more difficult on myself? We could rearrange a few records and papers in the folders sitting on the cabinet and see some major chaos. We could, but we won't, I told him. Thank you.
So Katrin comes up here when she knows very well that I was out of alphabetical order. I managed to, mangle and upend and complicate the simple. But both Katrin and Lise Mosel, who's about to come up here right now, have such grace that they were both, you jumped in and did what had to be done, and now Lise is going to do what we love best. So thanks so much.
I think upending the normal is sort of what we do here, so it's very appropriate. Thank you all for sitting through this. It's a lot of reading, it's a lot of wonderful reading, but I know I'm near the end, so I appreciate it. Brian, thank you for this incredible experience, this incredible program. And I'll tell you, having 3 women writers, the caliber of Gail Brandeis and Suzanne Roberts, and Crystal Sital, who's in New Jersey right now, not only read 130 pages of your work, but read it with insight and compassion and offer such incredibly valuable feedback. I will be looking for the rest of my life to find the words to thank you all. So thank you. As Gail alluded to a little earlier, in 2013 I moved to San Francisco to live with my aunt, Naomi. Naomi was 88 years old and she had Alzheimer's. We had a very special relationship when I was growing up. She was my role model. But it shifted when I got married and had my own beautiful family. You are all here tonight. Thank you for coming up. In 2013, though, I was newly divorced and basically a mess. My aunt had Alzheimer's and was basically a mess. My children were in college. She needed help. I needed a change, so it was a natural confluence of events at that point. So as Gail said, I'm writing my memoir about that time that I spent with my aunt. It's told in terms of a personal narrative of that time that Naomi and I lived together, interspersed with some flashback vignettes that I've written. And so tonight, I'm reading two short pieces. The first is one of those vignettes written from the point of view of my 9-year-old self, and the second of which takes place in 2013. So, I felt her the instant the car pulled in, a tug in my core, something shifting. Her energy always found a way to mine. Then the sounds, voices, footsteps, the side door closing, dog feet scrambling. A gossamer curtain floated through my bedroom door, whispered air. My 9-year-old skin opened flower-like to breathe it in. She was here. Naomi was here. I threw down my book, leapt off my bed, my feet running, running. A splash of blue in the kitchen. Her Pan-American uniform fitted perfectly to her slim form. Perky stewardess hat perched atop butter-colored curls, framing her oval face. She was laughing. She was always laughing. Tiny diamonds filling the space between her and me, tickling the walls. Well! More laughter as I launched my body at hers. Looking up, I caught a flash of gold molars. My arms wrapped around her waist. "How's my favorite niece?" she asked. I beamed up at her, squeezed harder. "Are you keeping your grades up? Showing the world who's boss?" The happiness flowing through me in that moment would surely have flooded our home, spilled out the windows, and flooded our neighbors' yards. She pried my arms from around her waist, whispered, "I have some things to show you." She took me by the hand and led me down the hallway, away from my mother and father. Her hard-shelled silver Halliburton suitcase trailed behind us, clicking on its wheeled cart. I was the only one who could see it sparkle. We turned into the guest room, my aunt and me, her words hanging in the air around us. "Exotic. You wouldn't believe those men. Such heat. Guess who I met?" Laughter, diamonds, dancing. She hoisted her suitcase onto the bed. My eyes were huge as she spun the combination lock. The world's best treasure chest was about to open for my eyes only. A soft click, the lid popped. The universe rushed out in smells, some familiar, some not. There was her perfume, L'air du Temps, always, and the general stuffiness of a suitcase that had been closed for hours and traveled halfway around the world, exhaling finally. There were spices I'd never smelled. Also small cakes wrapped tightly in plastic, but not tightly enough to keep hints of cardamom or seven spice or anise from wafting out. She brought the strangest treats. My nose and tongue tingled. She pulled out dried, salted plums from Asia, sesame candy, dried fruit rolled in unidentifiable powders in boxes covered with Arabic script. The best chocolates, always hidden beneath silky underwear, so the customs men wouldn't pry too deeply and see that she'd exceeded her limit. Cigars for various men, friends, also tucked away, rarely legal. For my aunt, going through customs was a grand game, and it's one she always won. She drew out small plastic bags, always reused, with candies for me, maybe a small bracelet, and once a piece of amber with a tiny reptile inside, captured in its prime and frozen there for all eternity. She told stories about everything, always teaching me something. We laughed. I clung to her every word, stuffing them one at a time into the back of my mind where I could pull them out later, savoring them one by one. Before bed, she showed me yoga poses, lectured me about complementary proteins, and saving for retirement, even now just a bit of my allowance. She gave me a delicate Japanese lacquer box for the coins. She said she'd check it when she came to visit again to make sure I was saving something, to make sure that I'd been listening. The next day, she put her uniform on again and flew away, leaving a trail of carefree laughter, a hint of adventures yet to be taken. A new centuries-old artifact on my parents' living room shelves. My heart would feel as full as the suitcase we'd repacked together that morning, the one I sat on, my child legs dangling over its cool, smooth side, bouncing so she could close it. That evening, I lay on my bed, surrounded by my new treasures, holding them under my nose, smelling them, turning them over with curious fingers, daydreaming about traveling the world with my aunt, just the two of us. My Aunt Naomi was my favorite person, the most glamorous, fascinating woman on the planet. I knew I would be exactly like her when I grew up. 2013. Thank you. The caregiving book. Naomi spotted the book the minute we walked through the front door, and I kicked myself mentally for leaving it lying out, balanced on the edge of the Indonesian rain drum table that she used as a coffee table. Coach Broyle's playbook for Alzheimer's caregivers. What was I thinking? My aunt, the perfectionist, noticed everything, even through the haze of her dementia. What's this? She bent down for a closer look. I wished the tiny metal elephants lining the edge of the drum would spirit the book away before she could see it. I hesitated, picking my words up like beach stones, one by one. It's the book I'm reading, Naomi, the one the doctor gave Mom at your first appointment. Coach Broyle's caregiver tip number 1, take a deep breath. She reached toward it, brushed the cover with her fingertips, put her hand on it. I held my breath. Caregiver tip number 5, when a difficult topic comes up, distract. Would you like a glass of wine? I asked. She ignored me. Naomi picked up the book and examined it. What's Alzheimer's? Her neurologist had gone over this with her before, I knew, but this was the first time she'd asked me about it. Mom said Naomi had never asked the doctor either. She'd heard the word and just shut down. I was surprised to find my lips trembling. I looked down, searching for more words to slide into my mouth. I wanted them to come out warm and round and clean. It's the thing in your brain that makes it hard for you to think, Noam. You have medicine for it. God, the thing you have in your brain? Really? What does that mean? I tried to sound calm, but my hammering heart fought me. Why was this so hard? I fought my heart back into my chest with Coach Broyle's caregiver tip number 1, another deep breath. Does anyone else have it? Does Mama have it? She looked at me. She was angry. Caregiver tip number 4, never correct. I didn't say that her mother couldn't have it because she died 14 years earlier. No, Graham doesn't have it. She looked down at the book again. Distract, distract, my brain screamed, but my lips wouldn't move. This person's in a wheelchair. I'm not in a wheelchair. She was defiant. Caregiver tip number 2, agree every chance you can. You're right. You're not in a wheelchair, Naomi. You're handling this really well. God, I prayed, please make her put the damn book down. She looked down again, noticed the picture of a dark-skinned couple on the cover. Oh, they look Ethiopian. Look at that beautiful skin. Her eyes lit up. I have lots of beads from Ethiopia, good ones. She dropped the book back on the table as though that solved everything. I breathed. Turning around, she saw the stack of junk mail on the dining room table and moved toward it. My legs wanted to buckle. My aunt, once an international lecturer on global antiquities, sat down next to the stack of come-ons for money and opened the first envelope as carefully as though it were full of explosives. She pulled out a form letter, examined it for a moment, and then snatched the black-handled scissors that she kept next to the stack. With a surgeon's precision, she started cutting the margins off the sides of the letter. People send me very important things, she said, looking at me. She was guiding the blade along the edges of the words. I heard it slicing from where I stood, a crisp exhale as the letter surrendered a strip of itself. I wish they wouldn't waste so much space, though. She glanced over at me and tucked her chin. I need to cut off all this white so I can see what they want. She turned her attention back to her task, humming to herself. Slice, slice, slice. Honey, would you please get me a glass of wine? I tried to get my legs to move, but they wanted to roll in on themselves like the margins of Naomi's letters. I went back to caregiver tip number 1, breathe. Again. Finally, my lungs let go and my chest filled as though it had been empty for a long time. I picked up the book and tucked it into the back of my pants. Sure, no, be right there. My voice caught. I went to the kitchen and filled up a glass of wine for my aunt. Then I carried the book upstairs to my bedroom and hid it under my pillow. Thank you.
And we have come to our last reader for the evening, Mr. Dave Yasuda.
Well, hi everyone. Thanks for sticking around. And thanks to all of you who are already at the paddle wheel. I'd also like to take a quick moment to thank the two important women in my life. My daughter Lily, who is here tonight. She was really the one that kicked me in the butt and said you should go to school. So here I am. She was in film school at the time, and so we were in school together, which was kind of cool. And then my wife Katie, who really, as all of you know, particularly spouses, it's kind of a sacrifice for your significant other to be in grad school. So honey, I promise we're going to go on vacation again one day. This is an essay called The Onion King. I wake up and walk out to the dining room. My dead father is sitting at the table, eating breakfast. 2 fried eggs, sunny side up, between 2 slices of white bread slathered with ketchup. After he finishes, he sits back with a cup of Folgers and lights up a Winston. He flicks ashes into an abalone shell, its mother-of-pearl interior blackened from years of use as a makeshift ashtray. He wears his favorite red and black plaid shirt with the sleeves cut off. I'm thinking he looks pretty damn healthy for a dead man. With his wardrobe and pale good looks, he would be extremely fashionable with the local hipsters. What are you looking at? He says after exhaling a deep drag from his cigarette. Your shirt, I answer. It's old, but it's a good one. Pendleton wool. I've had it for years. You having any breakfast? Just coffee right now, and a smoke. When did you start smoking? About a year after you died. Oh, it's not good for you, he says with a scowl. He leans forward slightly in his chair, bows his head, and shakes it deliberately back and forth in a way I've observed hundreds of times as a boy. I know, but I like it. Yeah, me too. We finish our cigarettes and my father announces it's time to get going. I don't have any idea what he's talking about, but I follow him out to the street. 2 old tractors with plows attached are parked in front of my house. A red Massey Ferguson and a green John Deere. I'll take the John Deere, my father says. It always was his favorite. I think about trying to trade, but reconsider. It seems he should have things his way today. He starts up his rig and drives towards the beach. I climb onto the Massey Ferguson, and it takes me a few minutes to orient myself. It's been quite a few years since I've driven anything larger than a car. It fires up, spewing black smoke and smelling like diesel fuel. I follow. No one seems to find the sight of heavy farm machinery rolling down an urban street a bit unusual, but then this is Venice Beach. We wave to the early morning beach crowd, surfers, homeless people, a Rasta dude on his beach cruiser. I'm glad my father chose a Monday morning for his resurrection. Beach traffic would be hell on the weekends. We drive down Windward Avenue till we reach the end. "I'll start plowing here," yells my father. "You head down towards a pier and work back this way." I pause to watch him prepare the ground. The old man can still drive a mean tractor. His rows are straight, even, perfect. He catches me watching him and glares. "What the hell are you looking at?" he yells. I drive towards the Santa Monica Pier and begin plowing the beach. We finish in the afternoon. "We'll plant onions tomorrow," my father says. "See you at 6. I don't have the heart to tell him. Throngs of tourists from every corner of the world will make short work of our efforts in the next several hours. See you in the morning. Tuesday morning arrives and I wake to the smell of fried eggs and coffee. Dad is finishing up his breakfast as I enter the kitchen. We don't exchange a single word. Just drink coffee, smoke, and read the paper. Finally, he says, "Let's go." "You know, Dad," I say, "a lot of people use the field around here. Our work from yesterday may need a little touching up." "Why the hell would anyone want to drive around in a field?" he asks. We head out to the street. The John Deere is back, but today a planter, a machine used to sow seeds, is attached. It has faded red wheels, and it's the same green color as the tractor. I jump onto the fender next to the driver's seat, and we head to the beach. This is foreign to me, since my dad and I never worked together like this when I was growing up. Farming was his thing, and he kept us at arm's length when we were kids. Strangely enough, our work from Monday is intact. My father gives me a questioning glance and shakes his head. "You know, it's hard to buy onion seed around here," he says, as he fills up the planters in the bin. Dad takes the wheel, I take my place on the fender and monitor our progress. He drives the tractor and equipment precisely up and down the rows. Seeds are individually placed into the ground and covered up. It's a process I found intriguing as a boy, and it fills me with wonder again after all these years. "What did they raise here last year?" my father inquires. "I don't think this field has ever been planted," I reply. "Really?" he exclaims, sincerely amazed. We finish as people begin to fill the boardwalk cafes and shops. "See you later," says my father with a nod of his head. I watch him negotiate the crowd on the John Deere. He removes his ball cap, emblazoned with a Treflan herbicide logo, and wipes sweat from his forehead. I stroll back to the house. Wednesday morning arrives and I walk out to the kitchen. I look around the room. There's a kitchen table, stacks of old newspaper, but my father's nowhere to be seen. I enjoyed our brief time working together, and I'm disappointed he's not here. I decide to go for a run. I put on my running shoes and stretch. Soon I'm heading west towards the beach. I cross Pacific Avenue. I can hear the waves and smell the salt air. I come within sight of the ocean and drop stride. Venice Beach, as far as the eye can see, is overgrown with neat rows of onions. I walk over to the closest rigid green stalk and I tug on it. The sand yields easily and I pull a large, round onion from the beach. It is a voluptuous, symmetrical globe, light tan in color, with a heft surprising for a mere vegetable. I hear the sound of a diesel engine revving in the distance. I look up to see the old John Deere moving methodically up and down the beach. The tractor's pulling an implement that extracts the onions and places them on the ground to cure in the sun. My father looks deep in thought. He doesn't seem to notice me. He pilots the machinery in an exact path down each planted row. They run toward the ocean, so his tractor moves to the water and then turns back in the direction of the boardwalk. My father is singing to himself and seems happy. I decide running can wait, turn around, and head home. The next morning, I walk into the kitchen and my father's sitting at the table talking on the cordless phone. I get myself a cup of coffee and make some toast. "All right, Chief," Dad says. "I'll see you later." Chief is my father's nickname for my mom's brother, Mass, who died a couple of years after Dad. When I was a kid, they compared notes by phone several times a week. He was one of the few people my dad seemed to genuinely respect. My father finishes his conversation with my uncle and waves the handset at me. "How the hell do you hang this thing up?" he says. "Press the talk button." "But I don't want to talk, I want to hang up." It's difficult to argue with his logic. Hey, I need you to drive the harvester today, he says. Okay, I say, and we head out the door. The John Deere is outside with the onion harvester attached. We drive towards the beach. The early morning crowd recognizes us by now. My father enjoys the attention and waves heartily. We'll have to give some of our onions to these people, he says. Sure, Dad, I said. This is a true Pete moment. I grew up watching him randomly shower generosity on perfect strangers. When we reach the beach, there's a heavy-duty truck parked by the sidewalk cafe. Uncle Mass is driving it. He nods at me. I am beyond being surprised by the unusual, and I wave at him. Good morning, Uncle, I say, genuinely happy to see him. Good morning, Jughead, he says, referring to me with his favorite nickname that roughly means someone who is not too bright. Today, it oddly feels like a term of endearment. Ready to do some driving, I ask? What the hell does it look like, Jughead, he responds. I shake my head, overwhelmed once more by the deep warmth of my family. Hey, Chief, let's get going, my father yells. Okay, Pete, my uncle replies. My father and I drive the tractor to the first row of onions. The green tops have been removed and the Southern California sun has perfectly turned the outside skin to a gorgeous gold patina. The rows of onions reflect the light of morning light like nodules of precious metal. Nice job, Dad, I think to myself. He nods, takes a deep breath, and I realize for the first time I inherited my inability to accept praise from the old man. The harvester has a steel conveyor belt that scoops up the onions at ground level and moves them up and into the truck. My uncle skillfully positions his rig so the onions are neatly deposited into its large bed. When we hit maximum capacity, Uncle Mass hauls the load away. When he returns, the truck is empty. This is puzzling to me, but there's not a moment to ask about the disappearing onions. By late afternoon, we've knocked out most of our work and we take a break at a cafe on the boardwalk. Everything about it is very Venice and not very Idaho. We walk up to the counter and a slender black woman with a bustier and flowing tie-dye skirt takes our order. How about a piece of pie and a cup of coffee, my father says. Sure, says our counter person. I have apple or blueberry or blackberry fig. Better make it apple, my father says. Make that too, says my uncle. Just coffee for me, I say, and I round up a table large enough for the three of us. So, Uncle, I start, where are you hauling the onions? My father and my uncle look at me as if I'm a complete idiot and laugh. Where do you think I'm taking him? Inquires Uncle Mass. Well, I don't know of any packing sheds here on the beach, so maybe somewhere inland? Jughead, I'm taking them to Jerry's. Jerry's refers to the Bowman onion packing shed in Marcy, Idaho. It's a distance of about 900 miles from Venice, and I estimate it would take a vehicle of this size with a full load of onions at least 18 hours to make the trip one way. Okay, I say, and decide it's my turn to laugh. We finish our break and head back to the beach. Each of us has our roll down pat, and we make great time. We finish as the sun begins to set. Uncle Mass leans out the window of his truck and waves. See you guys later. I'm dropping off this load, then I'm going home. Hey, thanks for the help, Chief, says my dad. Bye, Uncle, I say, and I give him a wave. I watch his truck drive towards the pier. It turns left towards PCH and it disappears. I look around me. The shadows are long and the temperature drops rapidly as the breeze cools, as the cool ocean breeze begins to blow. There's a guy playing guitar and singing Dylan in front of a cafe. Two slender, blonde, brown-skinned girls in neon bikini tops and torn Levi shorts rollerblade down the boardwalk. Vendors are tearing down their booth for the night. They box up t-shirts, sunglasses, incense, socks, whatever sells to tourists. The day is over here at Venice Beach, this place I currently call my home. I hear the sound of a diesel engine picking up speed. I turn around to see my father piloting the John Deere. A black cloud pours from the smokestack. I can't hear him or see his mouth move, but I know he's singing Danny Boy. Orange light falls on his farm-weathered skin. And just when I think he's driving off without saying goodbye, he turns, catches my eye, nods his head, and gives me a small smile. As he turns back around, he hunches over the steering wheel and squints to avoid the sting of the setting sun. My father turns the tractor west, due west into the silver blue Pacific and the pale light of the end of the day.
wonder if Tara would come up and join me up here? All right. Wow. You all feel full? Yeah? All right. Now it's present time. We have some presents for a few people. Yeah, I know, right? Yeah. It's a very dramatic entrance Tara makes here. Yeah, we got a present for you. And June, where's June?
Allison. Is Allison here? Elise.
Yeah, Elise. We have to be carrying Gwen. Where's Gwen at? Absolutely, absolutely. And Davis. Oh, there's Marcy and Kathy. And Rachel. So come on up here. And Julie and Dave. Woo! Is Marcy here? So, all right. So that's all. I should have asked you. Oh, okay. And a present from all of us to Tara. This is a pen that can write upside down and sideways and all different. Yeah. So when you're on your travels and you're zip lining across somewhere, you can write from where it says you got it. So the last thing we do tonight, and it's actually where I step aside, and everyone knows what to do. Actually, even those who are new to this, you know what has to happen then.
Maybe you don't. Maybe I have to like this thing. These things are fading. Check that as well.
I'll keep moving.
Is Marcy here? Marcy?
I think she said that.
This happens to me every time. 2, 1, 2, 3.
Thanks everyone. Enjoy the night and drive safely home. For those of you who are traveling home in the program, please text me once you're home just so I know you're safe and sound. All right, much love to all. Take care.
Thank you.